Hey there! Welcome back to another review, this time of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. Dream Warriors is a sequel, the second sequel to the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. It's pretty much what it does is it retcons the events of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 as if they never happened. It was released in 1987. It's directed by Chuck Russell, who also helped write the screenplay along with Frank Darabont. Wes Craven also had a hand in the screenplay. In fact, he and Bruce Wagner wrote the first draft, and then Frank Darabont and Chuck Russell came in and added their touches to the film. And it was a pretty successful film, critically and financially. It was made on a budget of about $4.5 million, which, when you see the film itself, is really impressive. To see that they only had about $4.5 million to work with, and they ended up creating some really spectacular visuals with it, and really did a great job using the best of their budget to the best of their ability. And it made about $44.7 million domestically, so that's a pretty big hit. It stars Heather Langenkamp, who comes back to the franchise as Dr. Nancy Thompson. She's a graduate student who's become a doctor, and she's there to help some of these teenagers who are having problems with their sleep, so to speak. She became a expert in sleep disorders, so to speak. So she comes in to help these students, these kids, these teenagers having troubles with not only with sleeping, but with their own personal lives and things like that. And some of them have already had a few suicide attempts, so to speak. So these are troubled teens with some psychological issues, which are not really tied into a psychosis. They're more tied into Freddy, which I always thought was actually a really interesting, good aspect of the story. It's actually the film's actually a lot more clever than it gets credit for in that aspect. That it's deals with that. It deals with these kids who have committed suicide and some of them obviously have not succeeded because they're still alive, but they've tried to do it, and mainly because of their dreams, because Freddy is haunting them. Freddy is stalking them in their dreams, and when these kids start dying off, and one of them in particular actually appears as if he committed suicide, but just that thought that maybe the people who commit suicide are not doing it under their own accord, that somebody else is doing it to them, that there's this otherworldly force or spirit that is forcing them to do things against their will, and that's why they die. That's something I think is really ingenious and definitely really terrifying. Also, but Heather Langenkamp isn't necessarily, I would say, the star, but she has a good amount of screen time, and she's one of the few returning cast members from the first film. She returns as Nancy, and John Saxon also returns as Donald Thompson, her father. Patricia Arquette, though, is probably what you'd arguably probably consider maybe the star of the film, other than Robert Englund, who of course comes back as Freddy Krueger. Patricia Arquette plays Kristen Parker. She's one of the teenagers who deals with these sleep disorders, and also had attempted suicide in the past, especially early in the beginning of the movie. And really, what it is Freddy that makes her do it. Like, she thinks and so that makes it really interesting, is that once they get out of the nightmare, it appears to anybody from the outside that they just tried to kill themselves. So you have Robert Englund, who plays Freddy Krueger, Jennifer Rubin, who plays Taryn, Craig Wasson, who plays Dr. Neil Gordon. Craig Wasson, you might be familiar with. He was in a 1980 horror film called Ghost Story. But he was also in Body Double, I believe. I don't know if was he in Ghost Story? Was that another movie? No, he was in Ghost Story 1981, not 1980. It was a 1981 film, Ghost Story, and then he was also in Body Double, 1984, a Brian De Palma film. And you also have Ken Sagoes, who plays Sagoes. I don't know if I said his last name correctly, who plays Kincaid. You have Rodney Eastman, who plays Joey. Bradley Gregg plays Philip Anderson. You have Ira Heiden, who plays Will Stanton. Laurence Fishburne in an earlier role plays Max Daniels, one of the guys who works at this facility where these teenagers are being kept. In a way, it's a psychiatric facility. So they're being kept in the psychiatric facility, and Laurence Fishburne is one of the guys who works there. You have Penelope Sudrow, who plays Jennifer. Priscilla Pointer plays Dr. Elizabeth Sims. Such a bitch. Clayton Landy plays a character named Lorenzo. Brooke Bundy plays Elaine Parker. And Nan Martin plays Mary Helena. And Dick Cavett plays himself, as well as Zsa Zsa Gabor. And the production of the film was Elm Street creator Wes Craven. He had a little bit of a falling out with New Line. He did not want to participate. He did not participate in the first sequel, and he did not want the first film to evolve into a franchise because he had intended for the. But he decided, okay, let's end the series with this film. So he intended Dream Warriors to be the last film in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, but his success prompted a continuation. And Craven's very first concept for this film was to have Freddy Krueger invade the real world, emerging to haunt the actors filming a new Elm Street sequel. New Line Cinema rejected this meta-cinematic idea at the time, but then the concept was brought to the screen with New Nightmare. And the dream suppressant drug Hypnosil, which Neil researches, is also featured and written into this film, and it's more prominently featured in Freddy vs. Jason. And the psychiatric hospital Weston Hills appears in both Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5 and Freddy vs. Jason. In interviews of the cast and crew on the DVD extras, which are included in the Nightmare Encyclopedia as well as on the Blu-ray, is revealed that the original idea for the film centered around the phenomenon of children traveling to a specific location to commit suicide, with dreams of Freddy Krueger eventually discovered to be the common link between the youths. Suicide at the time was a taboo social issue that led to the abandonment of that storyline, though some aspects remained within the film version, which still depicts suicide and self-mutilation, though they were deemed less controversial because these are acts committed with Freddy's distinct influence, inserting enough fantasy into the acts to remove it from the supposed controversial exploitation of disturbed youth in America. And in the original script by Wes Craven and Bruce Wagner, the characters were somewhat different from what they were eventually filmed. Actually, the characters are really different. In fact, the original screenplay was miles different than the version that Frank Darabont and Chuck Russell ended up working on that ended up becoming the feature film, became the Dream Warriors that we know and love to this day. If it wasn't for Frank Darabont and Chuck Russell's input, I don't think the film would be nearly as good or nearly as classic, because I've read, the novelization of Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is based on an early screenplay, and it sucks. It really does. No offense to Wes and Bruce Wagner, it's just a really lame sequel. It's a lame script. So the characters are a lot different. Nancy was not a dream expert nor any kind of mental health professional. Kirsten stayed in the institution only for a while and had a father. Neil's last name was Guinness when he was much younger. Dr. Sims' last name was Madalena. Taryn was African American. Joey was the one who built the model of the house and had trouble getting around, although he did not use a wheelchair. Philip was a 13-year-old, and Will's name was originally Laredo. He had long hair and did not use a wheelchair, and he was the one who made clay puppets. The script also showed the ranch house where Krueger was born, and it is the house that shows up in their dreams rather than the Elm Street house. Contrary to the film, Lieutenant Donald Thompson knows from the start that Krueger is real and still alive, and he had been missing, and Nancy was intent on fighting him, and she finds him and learns that he was obsessed with finding the Krueger house and burning it down. In the original script, there's also romance between Nancy and Neil, and they eventually have sex. There are scenes and lines that are very reminiscent of the first film. There is no talk of Krueger's mother having been a nun, or Freddy being the bastard son of 100 maniacs, and both Joey and Kincaid are killed. The deaths in the script were much more grotesque, while Krueger not as talkative and more vulgar. Freddy is killed by Nancy using his own glove, not by holy water. In Jeffrey Cooper's novelization, the original Craven-Wagner version of the Nightmare 3 script is adapted. That's the version I'm talking about. Thus, the book version of the story is fairly different from the finished film. And it is. I'm not a fan of it. I really am not. Really not a fan of that screenplay. So, the film also features a score by Angelo Badalamenti. At times, it sounds very much like Goblin. like a Dario Argento film, and at some points it really does work. Other points it feels way too melodramatic for my taste. So this is, in my opinion, this score is a step down from Christopher Young's score from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. I think that's a much better score. This, it incorporates, the only times I really like the score is in the moments where there's a couple moments when Freddy is chasing uh, sorry, chasing Kristen around. I liked that little bit of suspense music, and I like it when it reincorporates the score from the original movie, from the 1984 film, from Charles Bernstein's score. But that's more of what Charles Bernstein composed rather than anything that Angelo Badalamenti came up with. At points, his score sounds like it. I don't know, it makes it sound like a cheaper film than it really looks like. But that's just me personally. I'm just not a big fan of the score. Not a big fan of that score. A few things I like, but the rest of it is just, it's too too much. It seems to telegraph its scares. It doesn't really add a lot of atmosphere or mood to me to the film for me personally. But I love Dawkins. That's a huge plus for me. That's that made up for it. You know, Dream Warriors and Into the Fire, and in the theatrical version of the film, you hear Into the Fire in the beginning of the movie, and they reincorporated that on the DVD and Blu-ray release. But on home video, like on VHS, the first VHS release, they for some reason they had the rights for Dream Warriors, but they couldn't get the rights for Into the Fire, so they had to, because they were too cheap or something for distribution rights, so they ended up replacing the song with Quiet Cool by Joe Lamont, which I don't mind the song, and that song is included in the film Quiet Cool with James Remar. So that's why it sounds a little bit different on the home video version. Excuse me. And so yeah, Dawkins, Dream Warriors, one of my favorite songs from Dawkins. Dawkins, one of my favorite bands. I actually saw the music video for Dawkins' Dream Warriors and heard the song long before I actually saw the film. So my first exposure to Dream Warriors was the song Dream Warriors by Dawkins. Cinematography is by Roy H. Wagner. I think he did a good job. I think the cinematography is really good, actually. Did a great job with the lighting, and the cinematography itself created a lot of mood. I just felt the score didn't really help it that much, for the most part. Editing by Terry Stokes and Chuck Weiss. They also did a good job editing the film. It's very seamless. It's got some really great transitions in it. I really love the stuff near the end where they're in the dream world, they're in Freddy's world, and they're inside the isolation room, the quiet room, and you know, all the way that the shots are transitioned is feathers flying in the air, and then they transition to the next scene. So yeah, the cinematography and the editing did a great job creating this dreamlike, nightmarish look to the film. So yeah, that's the cast and crew. I'm gonna go down the plot synopsis, and I'm gonna talk about a little bit of some fun trivia. Then I'm gonna talk about mention a few quotes from the film that I definitely like, or might even mention them while we're doing the plot synopsis. Give you guys my pros and cons, and then give you guys my final review. Give you guys the rating for the film. 1 year after the film takes place, 1 year after the events of the second film. Where Kristen Parker is scolded by her mother Elaine to go to bed after staying up all night making a papier-mâché house. Kristen objects but obeys her mother. As she dreams, she is stalked in her model house, which is revealed to be 1428 Elm Street, the home of Nancy Thompson and Jesse Walsh. Even though Wikipedia's plot synopsis mentions Jesse Walsh, there's no mention of Jesse Walsh at all in this film. Running from him, she wakes up in her own bed again and realizes it was a dream. The stalker is revealed as Freddy Krueger, then appears to her, and when she goes to wash her face, and proceeds to slash her wrists with his claws. And this particular sequence, I thought was really suspenseful, really well done, where she's running from Freddy, and she gets her feet stuck in this oil slick like ooze, and Freddy's going after her. And this is probably, I would say, the moment where Freddy was the scariest in Dream Warriors, because then he would turn, the catchphrase guy, and I like that Freddy Krueger. I think the catchphrases are great. The one-liners, when the one-liners work, they're great, and I still think Freddy's scary. I just think he's also a lot of fun. I think that's a bonus. I don't think that's a bad thing. He did that in Nightmare 2 as well. You got the body, I got the brain. You know, that kind of stuff. Come on, you know, we can help you. You know, help yourself, fucker. You know, so he did that before. So I didn't really think it was that out of place that he's saying one-liners in this movie. I didn't really get the backlash that this film got after it was a big hit. Yeah, because of things like Freddy's dead and so forth. Well, that's not Nightmare on Elm Street 3's fault. That's stuff that Freddy had been doing before. I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy. You know, that kind of stuff. Freddy has always been scary, but he's also had a pretty dark sense of humor. It's just later in the films where they ended up expanding it a little bit more. But it's not like it wasn't there in the first place. And Chuck Russell actually mentioned that's what he wanted to do with part 3. He really wanted to bring out the comedic side of Freddy and make it a film about Freddy. You know, it's Freddy's movie. And yeah, in a lot of ways it is Freddy's movie. And it's Freddy's show. And that's a good thing because Robert Englund's a very charismatic character and a great villain. And you love to hate him. And a lot of people end up loving Freddy, and I love Freddy. I do. I love this character. He's great, and I really love the Freddy who says the catchphrases and stuff like that. I love that Freddy. I love the Freddy who goes, "Welcome to prime time, bitch." I love that Freddy. That's the Freddy that I pretty much really grew to love and admire. So anyway, But that sequence was really suspenseful, I thought. It got my heart racing. It really did. I don't, there's something about it just got my heart racing. The way it's shot, the way things are edited. That's a moment where Badalamenti's score actually really worked. And yeah. So she escapes. She wakes up in her own bed, realizes it was a dream, but it's still another dream because the stalker's Freddy Krueger. He appears, and then she goes to wash her face, and then she ends up getting her wrist slashed with his claws because what happens is in a pretty cool sequence where she goes to wash her face, Freddy shows up, and then the knobs on the faucet, they come to life and grow claws and then scratch her. Elaine then walks in, her mom, and Freddy makes the attack appear as a suicide attempt and has her admitted to the hospital for help. Going into hysterics after attempt to sedate her, Kristen is calm when Nancy Thompson, a newly hired member of the hospital staff, arrives and earns her trust by finishing Freddy's nursery rhyme. Nancy is then introduced to the rest of the ward, where you have Philip, a skilled puppet maker, Kincaid, a tough kid with a short temper, aspiring actress Jennifer, former drug addict Taryn, Joey, who is so traumatized by his nightmares he refuses to speak, and Will, who is bound to a wheelchair after a failed suicide attempt. Nancy works closely with Neil Gordon, who is played by Craig Wasson, who's very invested and attached to the kids. Kristen calls on a long-forgotten ability to bring Nancy into her dream, which I thought was really cool. The concept of being able to bring other people into the dreams to fight Freddy, I think was a very novel and very cool concept. And so she brings her into her dream. She is then inspired that they need to work together to defeat Freddy, but their fears go unheard by the hospital staff. And the following night, Philip is mistaken for sleepwalking when Freddy turns him into a living puppet. Great effects by Kevin Yeager and company, where they make his tendons. Pretty much what they do is they turn his tendons into strings, and Freddy's puppeting him around like a puppet master. So he turns him into a living puppet. He's then led up to the towers above the ward and then sent falling to his death in front of the others. Afterward, Jennifer is then killed after Freddy possesses a TV and smashes her head into it. In that iconic sequence. I really love that sequence. She's watching TV. Dick Cavett is on. It's like she's watching Dick Cavett's talk show, late night talk show, and he's interviewing Zsa Zsa Gabor, and he's like, "Can I ask you a question?" And Zsa Zsa's like, "Why, certainly." And I love how then Dick turns into Freddy, and he's like, "Who gives a fuck what you think?" I love that because I totally feel the same way about those stupid talk shows. But especially a lot of the guests, especially Zsa Zsa, who gives a fuck what you think? And then, of course, then Freddy goes, "This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch." That's actually something that was ad-libbed by Robert. Robert says this is the one line out of pretty much the entire franchise that he ad-libbed, because the original line he didn't think was good enough. He didn't think it was Freddy enough. It didn't have a right flow. It's too many words. So then he came up with "Welcome to Primetime, Bitch," and the rest is history. I mean, that's one of the most iconic one-liners in Nightmare on Elm Street history. I mean, in the franchise's uh, entire run, for good reason. It's a very memorable line. So he kills her, and then Neil begins to lose hope, but then meets a nun named Mary Helena, who warns him that the unquiet bones must be laid to rest. Nancy suggests using Hypnosil, an experimental drug designed to prevent dreaming, which I thought was another cool addition to the script. I mean, just the concept, just the idea of a drug that can make it so you stop dreaming in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is it was a really good idea. And it was used later in other films. And Neil refuses initially, but then when Kincaid is sent to the quiet room for sedation, he changes his mind. And I love Kincaid. Kincaid's got so many awesome. He's really cool. Kincaid's got some of the best lines of dialogue when when they have their first group therapy session, and they're all talking about each other, and they're introducing themselves. I think to Nancy. Jennifer's talking about mentioning her. She's introducing herself to the group. She's like, "I'm Jennifer Caulfield. As soon as I get out of here, I'm going to go to Los Angeles and be an actress. I'm going to be on TV." And then Kincaid's like, "Yeah, lifestyle of the rich and psychotic." She's like, "Screw you." So I love that. He has some more stuff. I love it when he fights back, because there's Elizabeth Sims, who is she's basically the bitch of the group. She's the one that's a skeptic. She doesn't believe in that Freddy is killing these kids, but it's all their fault. She even says stuff like, you just need to understand that it's all where she's just like, you won't make any progress until you recognize that your dreams are what they are. And then Nancy asks her what they are. What are they? She's like, then they are the byproducts of guilt. Psychological scars stemming from moral conflicts and overt sexuality. And then Kincaid's like, oh great, now it's my dick that's killing me. And then I love the scene where then he goes in and he fights back, where he's had enough of Sims' shit, and she's like, I'm not going to take any more of this. How much longer are you going to go on blaming your dreams for your own weaknesses? Lady, how much longer are you going to keep blowing smoke up our ass? It's enough, Kincaid. There will be no more repeat occurrences of last night's events. From now on, your doors will be locked during sleeping hours. We'll start a policy of evening sedation for everybody. And then Kincaid jumps out of his seat and he's like, the fuck you will! Anybody who tries drugs on me gets his ass kicked! Well, you just bought yourself a night in the quiet room, mister. Now sit down! Fuck you! You sit down! I just love that. Kincaid is such a badass. So, Kincaid gets sent to the quiet room, and then Nancy lets the survivors in on Freddy's past, and through group hypnosis, another cool, really nice, great concept. This is actually a really clever script. It's a much better script than it gets credit for, to be honest. And they then enter a shared dream and discover their dream powers. They're dream warriors. And but Kincaid's really strong. Kristen has like gymnastic abilities, like she can do flips and stuff. Trying to think of the other guy. There's one kid, Taryn. She gets like a mohawk, and like she's got like switchblades. And there's the other kid who's in the wheelchair. I think it's Philip. Yeah, Philip. I believe it's Philip. Philip, he believes he's the dream. He believes that he's the wizard master. And so anyway, so they all go on the dreams. And I like the way the sequence is set up, because it makes it look like it didn't work. But then you find out it's there in the dream world, when the little, those balls that, these metal balls that you see on desks, in offices and stuff, that you throw one, and then they all clack together and move. Well, they all break off and then float in the air. It's kind of a dated optical effect, but I still don't mind it because it's still a really cool way to reveal that they're in the dream world. And so Joey, though, is then lured away in this world and captured by Freddy, and in a scene where the nurse, who is really gorgeous, this nurse, Stacey Alden plays Nurse Jackie, and Joey has a crush on her, so Freddy uses this against him, where it makes it look like, she wants to get Joey, gives Joey some action. Of course, he believes it, and then, and he ends up. Thankfully, you didn't see the way they originally intended. They originally intended to show Freddy with tits, and I'm glad it didn't go that way, because I don't know about you, I love Freddy, but I don't want to see Freddy with tits. I don't want to see Freddy Krueger with tits. I don't think anybody wanted to see that, so they cut away just in time. Before you see Freddy with tits, which is good. And I like how they do this, where he gets tied to these bedposts by these tongues, and it's like, "What's the matter, Joey? Feeling a little tongue-tied?" Yeah, I always thought that was pretty cool. Good practical effect too with the tongues, like the girl, tongue flies out and then wraps him to the bedpost, and then wraps his other arm to that. His arms and legs are tied to the bedpost with tongues. That's the kind of ingenuity that I love about this franchise. And this is the first film that really incorporated that really cool, ingenious fantasy element to the series. It really took everything, the kind of stuff that Dreamscape did, and then took it to a whole nother level, and just made the series stand out from all the other slashers because of its ability to just find these really inventive, crazy ways of killing off characters, and just really great stuff. I love the imagination that's on display in this franchise. And this is the first film that really expanded upon that. The first film had its moments. The second film, it was cool with the whole thing with Freddy coming out of Jesse. But this is the first one where they really said, all right, we're going all out here. And there's no rules in the dream world. So anyway, Joey's comatose, these actions, the prescription Hypnocil get Neil and Nancy fired by the administrator, bitch, Dr. Carver, which is bullshit, because Hypnocil didn't cause it, and of course it's Freddy, but no one believes. No one thinks, because all the scientists, skeptics, thinks Freddy is it's just a dream and nothing else. And then Mary Helena appears to Neil again and then tells him of Freddy's origin, that he's the bastard son of 100 maniacs whose mother was raped by lunatics when she was locked in the asylum for the holidays by accident. I don't know how I feel about this particular origin story for Freddy. It seems like a bit, like it was a little bit, okay, it adds for the line, bastard son of 100 maniacs, that kind of thing, and it is pretty tragic. I mean, then, his mother being raped by all these kids, but all these people, these inmates. But it's just kind of like, I just thought kind of liked it more when Freddy was just a regular guy, but he was just a sick fuck. He wasn't some guy who was a byproduct of 100 maniacs raping his mom. He was just a really sick child murderer. I like that because it felt like it was a little bit more tied to reality. When they threw in this thing, then it felt like, okay, that's definitely Hollywoodized. That's definitely a Hollywood version of Freddy's origin. I honestly like how they did in Freddy's Nightmares, the TV series, the first episode. They didn't really, they just, okay, you just saw that he was a child murderer, and then you saw how the parents went in and hunted him down and then burned him alive. I thought that was I didn't need the origin that he's the son of 100 maniacs. And I didn't really need the stuff with his mother, her ghost is floating around, giving Gregg Wasson pointers. I don't know, it felt like it was something that just didn't feel like something that belonged in a Nightmare on Elm Street film. That's just me personally. I was just like, it just felt kind of like, okay, what am I watching the same movie? So she goes around and then tells him all these things and hints what he needs to do. Says about what happens to Freddy. Then realizing that his bones must be buried properly, which she told him about earlier, but she just repeats it, so he'll get it this time. Nancy and Neil then approach her father, Don Thompson, who is the only man who would know where they were hidden. Nancy is then called back to the hospital due to Kristen's outbreak, that she was gone, causing her to be sent to the quiet room. And she was pissed that Nancy's gone. And then I love her line too, where she goes in and she's fucking gives it to Dr. Sims. It's like, you stupid bitch, you're killing us. You're killing us. And she gets sedated, which of course that's a problem. So Neil convinces Dawn to help him find Freddy's bones, and then Nancy ends up going in to go save Kristen. And so then she, Kincaid, Taryn, and Will then decide to enter group hypnosis. I guess it's Ira Heiden who plays Will. I got it wrong. Bradley Gregg plays Philip. I think Philip is the guy who gets... Yeah, Philip's the one I think that... He's the one that gets killed with the suicide. Yeah. Philip gets killed with the suicide. So my bad. Anyone leaves a comment, says I got him mixed up. I acknowledge it. I did get him mixed up. It's Ira Heiden who plays Will Stanton, the Wizard Master. So Nancy convinces them to enter group hypnosis and unite with Kristen in the dream. But Freddy quickly separates them. He kills Taryn with the heroin overdose, which is a good sequence where he ends up getting the syringes for his finger, for fingernails, and then her, because she's a heroin addict, a recovering heroin addict. So then these like living holes open up on her arm and then start opening up, and he's like, I know I got what you need, and he's like, and then he goes in and right. He's like, let's get high. And then, with the syringes right in her arms, and then sucks the life out of her. It's like, ooh, what a rush. Which just sums up the film great. I mean, if I had to sum up Dream Warriors in just a quote, it would be, ooh, what a rush. Because it's a rush. It's a really entertaining film with a really, really good hook and a good script. Good characters. And so it kills off Taryn. And then he goes after Will, because Will tries to think he's the Wizard Master. He's like, I'm the Wizard Master. And he tries to shoot him with, be gone, demon, and shoots him with these, Dungeons and Dragons powers, spell powers, and Freddy's like, it's not gonna work. He's just like, sorry, kid, I don't believe in fairy tales. He kills his ass. It was like, that was pretty cool. I even like the way he was trying to chase after him with his own, with the messed up torture chair too, with all the weapons and all the spikes on it. And he's like, I thought it was pretty good too. So, and the cinematography and the lighting in that was really good as well. And before I go back to the sort of more scenes in the dream world, I just had to mention the more stuff from Kincaid. I really love the scene where before they all decide, the dream warriors decide to go into Kristen's, into her dream. And I love that. They were like, I'm in. And it's like, Will's like, I'm in. Taryn's like, me too. And then Kincaid's like, let's go kick this motherfucker's ass all over Dreamland. It's like, he's so awesome. And then Kristen also had a dream too, which I liked, which they don't really mention. But Kristen has a dream where Freddy, it looks like she's revisiting the sequence that opened the film. And then she thinks everything's alright, and then hugs her mom, and then you hear the guy that she brought home with her saying, like, yelling, and then Freddy shows up, and he's like, I said, where's the fucking bourbon? And then he decapitates Kristen's mom, and then lifts up her head, and he's like, you should listen to your mother. And then Elaine starts talking, and then her decapitated head starts talking to her. That was pretty good sequence. And this is the one where he's like, "It's the chair for you, kid." He's like, "I am the Wizard Master. I am the Wizard Master." He didn't really stand a chance. Freddy kicked his ass. But, so now it's just pretty much, they're the Kincaid, Nancy, and Kristen, and they're led down to this door that shows up, and then they go into Freddy's boiler room, pretty much into where he's kind of the heart of his nightmarish dream world. Great production design here. And Kincaid, of course, is like, "Let's go snuff this sucker." And even before that, I love the scene where he's pretty much talking to Freddy. That's what the door ends up appearing in order for, excuse me, the door ends up appearing so, because Kincaid basically talks shit to Freddy. And Kincaid is probably my favorite character in this film. He kicks a lot of ass. And he's like, "Yo, Freddy, where you hiding at, you burnt-faced pussy?" It's like, and Nancy's like, "Hey, we should find the others first. Think of hot shit with the little mute kid, don't you? Well, let me see you come and get a piece of me. Kruger, pussy!" Yeah, I know he was a little chicken. And the doors then appear behind them, and Jade's like, "Shit." Nancy's like, "It's a door, but it doesn't go anywhere." Kristen's like, "Yes, it does." Nancy's like, "Are you ready?" And that's where Kincaid says, "Let's snuff this sucker." So then they go down and they get in a fight with Freddy, and they try to rescue Joey. And Nancy does, after she tells Freddy to let him go, and he does. But Nancy saves him just in time before he falls into what looks like, the pit in Temple of Doom. And with the fire and the lava and everything. And then they find out that Freddy is stronger than before because he has been using the souls of the children that he's killed. That was a really great concept too. Because he's stronger because he's collected all of the souls of the children. And then, sensing that his bones are being disturbed, Freddy then leaves the dream world and possesses a skeleton and cool stop motions, throwback to Ray Harryhausen. And they free the others from his grasp, and they believe the battle will be over. Of course, that's actually, I'm skipping something, because what happens is you have the skeleton fights Dawn, kills him. So I was like, really need to kill him off, but alright. Injures Neil before returning to the dream world, tries to bury him alive, tries to separate the group again, and he manages to do so in a really cool scene with these mirrors, the Hall of Mirrors, where Freddy comes out, and he appears on multiple mirrors, and then grabs everyone, pulls them into the mirrors. And this is a scene that I guess was extremely hard to shoot originally. Like, they did all these different techniques, and Chuck Russell and like an effects guy were like in the midnight hour before, literally there was no time left to finish the movie, and then in order to finish editing the film for the release, they had to have this scene, so they just did an experiment with like some Mylar paper and stuff, and it worked really well. And that was one of those, they barely got that shot in. And Joey then shows his dream power, which he just yells really loudly, and it shatters the mirrors that Freddy was using to trap them, frees everyone from Freddy, and then they believe the battle will be over. And Dawn then appears from Nancy before Nancy and tells her that he's crossed over, and they embrace in their last goodbyes, but he turns into Freddy and then stabs Nancy to death. And of course says, "Die!" I'm not really, I don't like the idea of killing Nancy off. I mean, that wasn't really, it was just a shock. It was just to shock the audience. It just seemed like a cheap shock. But she ends up stabbing him with his own glove, though. So in a way, she kind of does help dispatch Freddy before she died. But at the same time, I don't think she really needed to die. But it was an opportunity for some good acting by Patricia Arquette when she was crying over Nancy when she was dead. And of course, Neil then awakens and then buries Freddy's bones and consecrates the remains, destroys Freddy, and ends up saving Kristen. Nancy dies in her arms. Kristen promises to send her off into a beautiful dream forever, which is a great bit of acting by Patricia Arquette. And then at the funeral service, Neil sees Mary Helena again, rushes to meet her, discovers that he's at the gravestone of Amanda Kruger, who was then also called Sister Mary Helena. Oh, what a twist. And then that night, Neil sleeps peacefully in his bed with Nancy's Malaysian dream doll on his dresser, along with the papier-mâché house, and then the lights come on in the house. And then Dawkins plays at the end credits. It's Dream Warriors. It's an awesome film. It's a classic. Yeah, so a little bit of trivia I'm going to talk about. Mainly some stuff that I remember hearing about on the DVD feature, the Blu-ray features. How Kevin Yeager, when he did the infamous Freddy snake sequence in the beginning, which I forgot to talk about, but everyone knows that scene with the Freddy snake that tries to swallow Patricia Arquette. Kevin Yeager's original design looked very phallic. Like, from a certain shot, it looked almost exactly like a dick. And so, and when they covered it, when they painted it, it was flesh colored, it looked even more like a dick. And Chuck Russell was like, we can't do this. This looks too much. This isn't overt at all. This is just too much. This isn't subtle. That's a dick. So, and they ended up covering it in the green slime, and that's why the Freddy snake has the green slime all over it, because, you know, if they just left the slime off, every shot that he was trying to do would totally look like a dick. So I thought that was kind of a fun little bit of trivia. Ken Sagoes stated in an interview about the film that he really didn't want to audition for the role of Kincaid, but his agent talked him into going. And on the day of the audition, he walked into heavy rain to catch a bus to the location. He then showed up completely drenched, and he had to sit and wait for a few hours due to the auditions running late. And when it was his turn, director Chuck Russell told him, do whatever you want to do. And Sagoes was so frustrated and mad about the whole ordeal that he yelled, fuck you! And then proceeded to scream and curse out Russell. And then Russell immediately hired him. That's the only instance where you tell the director to fuck off and you'll get the job. So I thought that was pretty that was a pretty fun bit of trivia. For 1 week during filming, Robert Englund was working 24 hours every day. By day, he was wrapping up filming on his TV series Downtown, and then he would report to Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors, set at nights. I guess Jennifer Rubin was told by some of her fans that her character of Taryn had caused them to quit drugs, and the actress is very proud of that fact. I would be too. That's a really great thing. It's a really wonderful thing that her character was able to do, is to help people quit the habit. It was the first writing credit for Frank Darabont. It was also the film debut of Patricia Arquette. I believe it was also the directorial debut of Chuck Russell. And yeah, the original Freddy Snake unintentionally came out looking too phallic. It wasn't intentional. The crew only had 1 hour to film the scene, so they didn't have enough time to paint it. So it was covered in green goo to overcome the flesh color. And the scene involving the Freddy snake attempting to swallow Kristen was also filmed backwards and then played in reverse due to the gums on the puppet being too flexible and they were folding over themselves. And for the sexy nurse scene, the set was flipped so that Rodney Eastman was actually standing up when he appears to be strapped to the bed. He had to be spread eagle for so long that he actually passed out. He compared the experience to a crucifixion. So it wasn't really that great of a scene for him, even though he got to see, he got to see the goods, he got to see Stacey Alden's tits. It was an awful. It was not a very good experience. It's really too bad. In the original script, one of the warriors dreams up a giant Transformer-style robot to fight Freddy. The sequence even made it into storyboard stage, but budgetary constraints made it and filming it impossible. I'm glad they didn't do that. That would have looked fucking ridiculous. That would have been like one of the most ridiculous sequences in the entire franchise. I mean, fucking Transformer robot fighting Freddy. Come on. Really. I guess director Chuck Russell and Patricia Arquette, I guess sadly they did not get along during filming. He stated it wasn't a pleasant experience for her, while Russell said he may have pushed her too hard. Because that's really too bad. It It was banned on release in the section of Queensland, Australia by the then Fijelka-Peterson government due to its drug references. The ban stood until 1990. I guess FX creator Mark Shostrom created a desiccated little girl corpse, which Kristen would discover while she was holding, but it was decided the item is too grotesque. A miniature skeleton was used instead. Just looking, for any other kind of stuff. I guess the fire department was always on set because the boiler room scene and the smoke from the machines nauseated many of the actors. Ira, Will, and Jennifer and Taryn would go out to lunch for their costumes, and people would stare at Jennifer like she was an alien. That's really too bad. She was like, "What the hell is up with that?" Originally, Taryn's character's head was to explode after being injected with Freddy's syringes, but it looked too fake. Oh, that's too. That would have been a cool ending to that sequence. A nice, good head explosion. I'm a fan of head explosions, although it would really be awful for Taryn's character. But if she's gonna die anyway, maybe might as well go out with a bang. Yeah. So that's just a little bit of trivia on the film, and I guess I'm just going to get into my personal pros and cons. Pros: cinematography, direction. Chuck Russell does a great job directing the film. It's his first time directing, and he really knocks it out of the park. He really knows what he's doing. He really knows how to handle the camera, knows how to handle the actors, knows how to really create a really great movie. I think Dream Warriors is a great film. It's my second favorite Nightmare on Elm Street film after the first film. I really love Dream Warriors. And so yeah, Jack Russell did a great job. The cinematography is fantastic. Dawkins, and then some and more Dawkins. I also love the music video. Dawkins one of the few bands, really the few things that Freddy is afraid of. Freddy has nightmares about Dawkins, and that's for a good reason, because you don't fuck with Dawkins. And a fun because that's how the music video ends. Freddy wakes up and he's like, "Oh, he's like, what a nightmare. Who were those guys?" So and even Freddy in the music video, Don Dawkins going, singing and Dream Warriors, and Freddy's holding his ears like, ah, that was great. Love that music video. But a real quick fun story about that music video is that according to Dawkins and the band themselves, and from their recollection, when they were on the set of that music video, Robert was really big. He was huge. He was a big movie star, and so a lot of these guys at the time were taking drugs, and the Dawkins ended up snorting some coke off of Robert's finger claws. I thought that is just so surreal and so awesome. Like, I don't really recommend. I don't really want to promote drug use, but that's pretty bad. I mean, who could say that? Who else can say that? Dawkins can say we snorted cocaine off of Freddy Krueger's claws. That we snorted coke off of Freddy's claws, man. So that was, I thought that was really a fun story. It's the only time I really equate drug use with fun for me, but yeah. But yeah, Dawkins, Dream Warriors, iconic song, one of the best soundtrack songs of all time. Definitely one of Dawkins' best songs. Performances by the cast and crew. Heather Langenkamp returns and does a great job with her role as usual. I think she was very convincing with her character. It's supposed to be an older, wiser character. I thought she did a great job with that. John Saxon was good with a little bit he had to work with as a jaded, delusional, former cop. He lost his job, and he was a security guard. He was drunk, and he was delusioned, and I thought John Saxon did a good job with that. Patricia Arquette did a great job as Kristen Parker. Whether or not she got on with Chuck Russell or not, she did a great job performance-wise. Robert Englund was fantastic as usual as Freddy Krueger. Jennifer Rubin did a solid job too as Taryn. I think she was better in this than she was in Bad Dreams. I liked her character more. I don't know why her character was so weird in Bad Dreams. That's a movie I need to watch again. But yeah, I remember that having some problems with that film. Craig Wasson he was all right as Dr. Neil Gordon. Pretty much what he is if Bill Maher was an actor, and he did. Bill Maher did act. He was in Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death. But he's very much like Bill Maher from Politically Incorrect, the show. The politician guy, Bill Maher. He's there. I would have liked to have had more of John Saxon versus Craig Wasson. Craig Wasson's there, but he's not terrible. I just think he has a little bit too much screen time. I would have rather had more screen time for Nancy and for John Saxon. Saxon he's not in the film that much. Ken Sagoes, I love his Kincaid. Rodney Eastman does a good job as Joey. Bradley Gregg does a pretty good job as Philip. Ira Heiden he doesn't really have a big role, but he does a good job of what he has to work with. Ira Heiden does alright as Will. He just plays a nerdy guy. Laurence Fishburne does a good job as Max, what he has to work with. Penelope Sudrow, Jennifer is there. Priscilla Pointer plays a great bitch as Elizabeth Sims. And good cameos and stuff by the other people. Nan Martin does a good job as Amanda Kruger. And so, yeah, performance-wise, there really isn't truly a bad performance out of the entire bunch for me. All of them do their jobs really well. So yeah, great direction, great cinematography, solid cast, good editing, a good story. I really like the story. I think it's engaging. I think it's really clever. And it's definitely got its fair share of wit to it, which I really like. This dark, sly comic wit that the film has. It's got some really ingenious, cool ideas. The whole idea of going into the dream world and fighting Freddy was awesome. And so yeah, there's a lot more pros than there are negatives when it comes to Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. Any negatives I come up with, I've already mentioned earlier, like the score points I don't really care for, and the ending. I don't really like. And like I said, I don't like the idea of Freddy being a bastard son of 100 maniacs. It was better the way they did it before. It wasn't so crazy. I mean, I could deal with it, but at the same time, I could deal without it. So that's not really something that means, oh yeah, it's good. If I could deal without it, it's not something that I think it's just there for me. And I'm not a fan of the whole ending where we need to consecrate Freddy's bones or some shit. I'm like, why would this religious stuff work? Freddy's not a vampire, and then I always thought the ending was kind of lame. I mean, first off, you kill off Nancy, which I don't like anyway, and then Freddy gets stabbed by his own glove, his bones get consecrated, and then, he spins around, light shoots out of his body, a cross opens up on his head, and then he disappears. I just thought it was... I mean, all that build-up for that, I was kind of lame, really, to be honest. I would have liked the Dream Warriors to kick his ass. That would have been better than just, consecrate the bones, Nancy dies, and there we go. I mean, Nightmare 4 does a much better job at the ending. I mean, it's the souls of the children he has killed rip his ass apart. And before that, Lisa Wilcox kicks his fucking ass. I mean, that is the best climax, the best ending in a Nightmare on Elm Street film is Part 4. And I'll get into that soon enough when I review Part 4. But Part 3, I love everything else. I love the majority of the film up until that point, except for a few things here and there. But the climax I just thought was kind of weak sauce. But that's just me personally. But other than that, those are the only problems I can think of when it comes to the film. So I really don't know what else to say about Dream Warriors. Just that was rated out of 5 stars. I would give the film 4.5. 4.5 out of 5. It's a step below the first Nightmare on Elm Street for me. But I love the film. I really do. Anyway, thank you for watching my long, in-depth review of Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 Dream Warriors. And I will see you guys later. See ya.